This man wasn't just an escape artist. He was a modern-day Houdini whose exploits seemed to defy reality itself. He engineered not one, not two, but 7 mind-blowing escapes from some of the most fortified prisons in the United States. He crafted keys from scrap, vanished from solitary confinement, and leaped over razor wire fences with a blend of audacity and genius that baffled authorities. So, who is this enigmatic genius of escape? How did a young man with an innocuous beginning transform into a mythic figure, a symbol of audacity and the human spirit's refusal to be caged? Buckle up and prepare for a thrilling ride as we unravel the spectacular, adrenaline-filled story of one of the most ingenious and fearless inmates in the history of American prisons. On April 14, 1961, a legend emerged amidst the Florida sun's sweltering heat, palm trees, and sprawling landscapes. His name is Mark DeFriest. But this wasn't your ordinary legend. It was a tale of defiance, resilience, and unyielding determination. DeFriest was born into a world of turmoil and uncertainty, and his childhood was filled with tragedy and upheaval. Raised in a tumultuous environment, he learned early on that survival meant adapting to the harsh realities of life behind bars. He lived with his dad, who had served in World War with the OSS, a predecessor to the CIA, and stepmom. There's one thing we must appreciate about him: that DeFriest liked to figure out how things worked. Mark DeFriest had a knack for mechanics and electronics from a young age, but he found social interactions challenging. It's like his brilliant mind was stuck in a tough situation. But it was his dad who noticed something special about Mark, his curiosity about how things ticked. His dad helped him and even let him make a lab in their basement. Mark loved taking things apart and putting them back together like a puzzle. But Mark wasn't good at talking to people. Some folks thought he might have Asperger's, but nobody knew for sure back then. Mark's dad, a former spy, shared tales of his adventures, which fascinated Mark. He even taught Mark some spy skills, like sneaking and blowing stuff up. Safely, of course. But school wasn't Mark's scene. He didn't fit in and caused a stir, so his parents sent him to a strict school. Mark hated it so much that he busted out, which became a habit. As Mark matured, he and his father collaborated on community projects, including welding repairs on a local bridge in Chatham. During one visit to a nearby restaurant, Mark met Brenda, a waitress who was immediately drawn to his blue eyes, blonde hair, and intellect. After dating, they married and embarked on road trips, during which Mark's truck, stocked with every tool imaginable, became his pride and joy. Brenda admired Mark's knack for fixing vehicles they encountered on their travels. Despite Mark's deep bond with his father, his relationship with his stepmother was tumultuous. She treated him poorly, neglecting and belittling him. Then tragedy struck when Mark's dad passed away. Despite his father's passing, Mark found solace in inheriting his beloved tools, which held immense sentimental value due to the memories of their shared projects. While still valuable for Mark's ongoing tinkering and repair work, the tools represented more than mere utility. They symbolized cherished moments with his father. Mark assumed ownership of the tools, unaware of the legal intricacies regarding wills. Although his father had intended for Mark to have them, the absence of probate meant they weren't officially his. But his stepmother, being mean-spirited, accused Mark of stealing them. From here, his journey began with a seemingly minor misunderstanding. A young man seeking to reclaim his father's tools after his passing ended up entangled in the justice system. What should have been a short sentence became a lifelong battle due to his escape attempts and extended sentences. Afterward, Mark, confused and scared, ran away. After fleeing to Alabama, Mark was apprehended by police and deported back to Florida, where he was charged with tool theft, weapon possession, and evading arrest. Despite the seemingly minor nature of these offenses, Mark received a 4-year sentence. At the tender age of 19, DeFriest found himself trapped in the criminal justice system's labyrinth. Prison life proved unbearable for him, but DeFriest was no ordinary inmate. Despite all the tough times, Mark never gave up. He showed that even when things seem impossible, there's always a way forward. With a mind as sharp as a razor and a spirit that refused to be broken, he embarked on a daring escape and an audacious feat that would captivate the imagination of all who crossed his path. Just a month into his stay at Bay County Jail, Mark became unintentionally involved in an escape attempt orchestrated by 8 other inmates while returning from Bible study class. Although Mark had no prior knowledge of their plan, he impulsively decided to join in upon seeing them make a break for the fence. Unlike the other inmates, Mark possessed the skills taught to him by his father from his days in the OSS, enabling him to navigate the razor wire atop the fence effortlessly. His expertise allowed him to overcome the obstacle, prompting the other inmates to plead for assistance. Despite not being involved in the plan, he managed to scale the fence, hot wire a car, and successfully escape. So, for Mark, freedom was fleeting. But Mark's lack of social awareness led to his swift recapture. As we know, each recapture brought harsher punishments, so his subsequent guilty pleas to 6 new charges only lengthened his sentence. Given his troubled behavior, authorities recommended a psychiatric evaluation. Jail proved harsh for Mark as a loner without gang affiliations for protection. One day, 15 inmates exploited his vulnerability, resulting in a brutal attack that left Mark needing surgery. Traumatized, his behavior deteriorated further, with him attempting suicide and engaging in self-harm within his cell. The psychiatric assessment for Mark was urgently needed. Initially, Brenda pledged to wait out Mark's 4-year sentence, but his repeated disciplinary issues and new crimes only served to prolong his incarceration. Frustrated, Brenda questioned how long she could continue waiting, expressing her reluctance to become the stereotypical wife of a permanently imprisoned man, feeling unfairly associated with criminality. She also endured uncomfortable advances from guards seeking to ease Mark's situation through sexual favors. Eventually, these challenges drove Brenda to seek a divorce. Mark's transfer to the Florida State Hospital in Chattahoochee, Gadsden County, for his psychological evaluation was met with disdain. He despised the environment just as much as prison, harboring a strong aversion to what he referred to as the crazies, whom he saw himself as distinct from. Recognizing the relative ease of escaping from mental hospitals compared to maximum security prisons, Mark devised a scheme. In an era where LSD was occasionally utilized as an experimental treatment for mental illness, Mark seized the opportunity to steal a sizable bottle of the substance from the hospital's pharmacy. With keen observation of staff schedules and routines, he surreptitiously infused the entire contents of the LSD bottle into a pot of freshly brewed coffee, equivalent to roughly 100 tabs of LSD. The plan entailed the staff consuming the laced coffee, triggering a collective trip that would divert attention, allowing Mark to unlock doors and exit leisurely. However, a security alert was issued due to increased agitation among the staff, which was exacerbated by an LSD overdose. Amid the chaos, a staff member experienced typical hallucinogenic effects, fixating on a spinning washing machine in the laundry room. Unexpectedly, the situation escalated as they engaged in a heated altercation with the appliance, ultimately necessitating intervention to restore order. Meanwhile, a female psychologist's inappropriate behavior further added to the absurdity, as she made suggestive remarks and gestures while traversing the ward. Despite the comedic elements, security's timely intervention thwarted Mark's escape attempt, culminating in failure. 6 psychologists assessed Mark's mental state, with 5 deeming him fit to stand trial. However, Dr. Robert Berland's evaluation labeled Mark sane, citing his intricate escape plans and coherent conversations as evidence. Similarly, interviews with jailers yielded conflicting observations. While 4 deemed Mark's behavior normal, a newly hired jailer reported concerning behaviors such as disconnection from reality, insect consumption, and erratic movements. Despite these contradictions, Berlin dismissed Mark's apparent mental illness as simulated, resulting in his transfer from the mental hospital back to prison, disregarding other evaluations. While incarcerated, Mark connected with a woman named Bonnie through a pen pal list. After exchanging letters, they decided to marry via proxy, only meeting in person a week after the wedding. Throughout the years, Mark maintained their bond by sending Bonnie cards and artwork crafted during his imprisonment, including depictions of his emotions that predate familiar internet memes. Mark eagerly embraced the opportunity to join a prison woodworking class when it was offered. Drawn to challenges, Mark found himself in a situation tailor-made for his skills. However, his MacGyver-like abilities proved to be a double-edged sword. Spotting rolled copper sheets and other components, he crafted not one but two double-barrel zip guns. Concealing them amongst his underwear, he returned to his cell. Using an ice pick, he extracted a tooth, causing a bloody mess that warranted a trip to the nursery station. With leg irons hiding the guns, he passed through metal detectors unnoticed. Though his self-inflicted injury raised suspicion, the emergency dentist patched him up, labeling it as self-mutilation. Before returning to his cell, Mark requested to use the bathroom. Surprisingly, the guard allowed him unsupervised access. Seizing the opportunity, Mark picked his locks and burst out, wielding his makeshift guns at the startled guards. With a chilling threat, he warned them to move, or he'll blow their brains out. Amidst the laughter of fellow inmates, some guards hesitated, doubting the seriousness of the situation. However, Mark dispelled their disbelief by firing one of the zip guns at a nearby phone, shattering it and proving the guns were natural and functional. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, everyone acquiesced as Mark orchestrated his escape. Hoping for a getaway vehicle, he scanned for passing cars, but luck wasn't on his side. Resorting to Plan B, he fled into the swamp. True to form, Mark excelled at escaping but struggled with remaining free. Eventually apprehended, he was discovered with a borrowed car and a gun, though some speculate the gun's presence was coincidental, believing Mark incapable of using it. Despite his knack for crafting firearms, guns were never his strong suit. Initially, authorities attempted to return Mark to the hospital, but they declined after the incident involving their coffee. Understandably so. Consequently, Mark found himself back at Bay County Jail. Placed in solitary confinement, he was restrained in a straitjacket and leg irons, much to his vehement protest. Reacting explosively, he embarked on a rampage, demolishing everything in his cell. Astonishingly, he freed himself from the restraints within 5 minutes and wreaked havoc using only a toothbrush. Discovering plumbing behind a broken light fixture, he ingeniously utilized a pipe to pry open his cell door. Entering what he termed a gunsmith phase, Mark fashioned firearms from whatever materials he could find, including a toothpaste tube. However, his penchant for trouble resurfaced when he allegedly fired one at a guard, though Mark claimed it was a test shot aimed elsewhere. Regardless, he faced an attempted murder charge and was promptly returned to solitary confinement after a severe beating from the prison guard gun squad. His punishment in solitary confinement was said to be severe as the guards sought retribution for his actions. Mark endured utter darkness, stripped of clothing, speech, and human contact. His cell lacked necessities, including toilet paper, which was exacerbated by the guards shutting off water access. Reduced to consuming meals with his bare hands, his existence resembled that of a captive in a medieval dungeon. Guards added to his torment by dousing him with water hoses and disrupting his attempts at sleep. Their relentless efforts mirrored the tactics used on North Vietnamese prisoners of war, illustrating their determination to break him. Before his court appearance, Mark was forcibly restrained and subjected to harsh shaving and scrubbing with a thick bristle brush by the guards. They aimed to coerce him into pleading guilty to the attempted murder of one of them, a plea Mark ultimately accepted. By then, he expressed apathy, simply wanting the ordeal to end. Enduring beatings, torture, and psychological demoralization, Mark's spirit had been broken. In an era of widespread abuse and corruption in U.S. prisons, one facility stood out as the epitome of dread: Florida State Prison, or simply FSP. Its name alone commanded obedience, even from the most hardened criminals. FSP served as a place of punishment, where inmates from other institutions were transferred for transgressions. During his tenure as warden from 1996 to 1998, Ron McAndrew depicted the Northern Florida prison as ungovernable. He recounted incidents where squads of correctional officers freely roamed the cell blocks, subjecting prisoners to beatings and degradation without consequences. Moreover, these officers ignored violence between inmates, disregarding the brutality within the facility. Known for its extreme strictness, even minor infractions resulted in severe penalties, such as losing a week of yard time, 7 days devoid of sunlight. Mark was transferred into this unforgiving environment. Mark, having outsmarted the prison system, found himself targeted for retribution. He became, bluntly put, a pawn for a Cuban inmate named Uno, who mockingly referred to Mark as Mrs. Wendy Castro. Uno married Mark, imposing rules, including a mandate for Mark to adopt a feminine persona permanently. Despite Mark's protests about not being gay or a transvestite, he complied begrudgingly. It was a means of survival, as adhering to Uno's demands offered him protection from the other inmates, albeit with a cruel irony. The very person shielding him was also the one subjecting him to abuse. Despite enduring unimaginable hardships, Mark remained defiant. Continuously, prison staff discovered weapons, tools, and contraband in his cell. Homemade handcuff keys, concealed saw blades in shoe soles, shivs, and even 5 .22 caliber bullets beneath his bed. How he acquired them remained a mystery. When questioned about the contraband, Mark simply quipped, "I'm James Bond 0007. To counter Mark's ingenuity, guards began safeguarding their keys in their pockets, as Mark had a knack for duplicating them just by observation. Noticing that the prison food trays matched the thickness of jail keys, Mark ingeniously crafted replicas from them. Even after the guards ceased providing him with trays, Mark adapted, fashioning keys from paper, which surprisingly still proved effective. He constructed a small radio dubbed the Sony Batman. Care to guess where he stashed it? Following its completion, Mark indulged in drugs smuggled into his cell while tuning into music. As his sentence progressed, he fashioned another double-barreled zip gun to meticulously cut through another inmate's cell bars, spending 8 hours per bar. Once free, he leaped considerably into the women's exercise yard and fled over the razor wire fence. However, it wasn't until the commotion subsided and Mark found himself 2 miles away that he realized the fall had fractured both his feet and wrist. Still managed to hijack a big rig truck and ram it through a police roadblock. Picture this: adrenaline pumping, heart racing. Mark's behind the wheel of this colossal big rig, plowing through a police roadblock like a scene straight out of an action flick. But here's the kicker. Mark flips the script instead of just gunning it down the road. He throws that beast of a truck into reverse, slamming into police cruisers left and right while the cops below go crazy, firing shots like there is no tomorrow. It's like something out of a wild, edge-of-your-seat thriller, with Mark pulling off moves that'd make even the most seasoned stunt driver jealous. And the best part? This crazy chase is just getting started. Hold onto your hats, folks, because this story will kick into high gear. Mark found himself in a dire situation again, with a truck lodged into someone's living room after a disastrous reverse maneuver. His misfortune led to an extended stay in prison, where life became increasingly unbearable. Violence pervaded the facility, with inmates falling victim to both brutal beatings by the notorious goon squad guards and the electric chair. Mark's proximity to infamous criminals like Ted Bundy, who met his fate in the chair, only heightened the danger. The true extent of the brutality was evident in the warden's grim observations, with inmates frequently found battered and bruised. Tragically, the brutality escalated to murder, exemplified by the chilling case of Frank Valdez in 1999. Mark, a witness to Valdez's death, faced imminent danger from vengeful guards and was swiftly transferred to a California prison for his safety. It's possible that the murder of Frank Valdez was the only instance of the goon squad's brutality to gain external scrutiny. When the new prison warden began probing into the pervasive beatings, he mysteriously faced relocation to a facility in Orlando. Amidst this backdrop, Mark's time at Florida State Prison was marked by a staggering 209 disciplinary reports, predominantly for fashioning weapons and attempting escapes. His unparalleled record of infractions notably extended his eligibility for parole. Suspicions arose that prison staff fabricated many of these reports as retaliatory measures against Mark. Mark has endured a staggering 27 years in solitary confinement, much of it in utter darkness. His sentence ballooned by an additional 30 years due to repeated escapes and escape attempts, extending his original 4-year term to a shocking 106 years, with a release date now set for 2085. Despite his harrowing circumstances, Mark's story caught the attention of writer and director Gabriel London, who approached him to feature in a documentary titled The Life and Mind of Mark DeFriest, released in 2014. The documentary shed light on the injustices of Mark's sentence, sparking public support for his cause. Many believe that Mark's remarkable intellect held the potential for outstanding contributions to society, making his incarceration a profound loss not just for him, but for the broader community. In the film, London and Mark's longtime attorney, John Middleton, arranged for Dr. Robert Burland, the psychiatrist who, in 1981, dismissed Mark's claims as fake, ultimately condemning him to life in prison, to revisit and reassess the case. In one poignant scene, Mark is escorted into a cramped cinder block office where a nervous Burland has his testing equipment set up. As Mark's transition lenses slowly adapt to the daylight, his speech becomes sluggish and garbled. He nervously chews the inside of his cheek, resembling a troubled teenager in the principal's office. By this stage, he appears resigned to his fate, displaying a demeanor akin to that of a submissive dog awaiting its execution. Meanwhile, Burland quietly conducts his evaluation. A subsequent mental evaluation revealed signs of mental abnormality in Mark, likely exacerbated by the numerous head injuries inflicted during prison altercations with both inmates and guards, as well as his extensive confinement in solitary for 27 years. He further asked questions and adjusted instruments, undoubtedly grappling with his guilt. He expressed regret, mentioning how things could have been different. Mark told him that it was nice to see him, by saying that his tone was loud and uncomfortable, a stark representation of his illness, before being escorted back to his cell. After enduring the profound psychological toll of 27 years in solitary confinement, much of it in darkness, Mark was granted parole on February 5, 2019. One condition of his release was a 12-month stay at a mental health and substance abuse treatment facility in Corvallis, Oregon, chosen for its proximity to his wife's residence. However, just 4 days later, Mark experienced a manic episode, prompting a urine test that revealed kidney failure and traces of methamphetamine. Subsequently, he was expelled from the facility and swiftly returned to Florida, initiating the process of parole revocation. Mark's legal team rallied to appeal for leniency, urging Florida and California authorities to prioritize treatment over reincarceration, given his severe drug addiction acquired during his time behind bars. Despite their efforts, the appeal was denied, and the state of Florida issued an arrest warrant. Mark was transported back to Florida, facing the likelihood of lifelong incarceration. On February 15, 2019, Gabriel London and Bonnie DeFriest accompanied Mark to the San Joaquin County Probation Office, where he was photographed with Bonnie moments before surrendering himself. On August 23, 2020, Mark's devoted wife, Bonnie, passed away at the age of 90, never knowing if her husband would ever taste freedom again. Despite the uncertainty, she stood by him unwaveringly until the end. The tragedy lies in the squandering of a brilliant mind, confined for so long to what many perceive as trivialities. Mark's ordeal resulted from a reaction to a situation in which, in retrospect, his actions were fueled by misunderstandings compounded by a lack of awareness about conditions such as Asperger's, particularly within the law enforcement and judicial systems at the time. Mark DeFriest successfully escaped 7 times out of 13 attempts. His escapades also involved collecting hundreds of disciplinary reports for minor infractions, leading to a cumulative stay of 34 years in prison. Is it fair for all of this to happen over taking your father's shop tools while the will is still in probate? Where's the justice in that? It's a profound loss for the world that Mark, now 63, has been deprived of such potential. He is in California's Kern Valley State Prison, located near Bakersfield. He has received letters from hundreds of supporters to boost his morale and, occasionally, some funds for his canteen. In return, he sends back paper airplanes adorned with military terms scribbled on the wings in pencil. Additionally, he showcases his artistic talent by creating intricately illustrated Gothic scenes depicting skulls, sorcerers, and eerie faces, a visual representation of his personal map of hell. Signing them with his pseudonym Wizard, he displays an uncommon gift for craftsmanship. The hope lingers that he'll adhere to the rules this time, but given his history, it remains uncertain. Mark DeFriest's life unfolds like a captivating saga, transcending the confines of prison walls to delve into the depths of the human spirit. Dubbed the Houdini of Florida, he earned this title for his remarkable ability to escape from high-security prisons in the state repeatedly. Despite the authorities' efforts to contain him, Mark's ingenious plans and daring escapes left them baffled and frustrated. His uncanny knack for eluding capture drew comparisons to the legendary Harry Houdini, solidifying his reputation as a modern-day Houdini within Florida's prison system. Yet, amid his escape's intrigue, Mark's story tells of tragedy and injustice. Setbacks, betrayals, and the harsh realities of incarceration mark his relentless pursuit of freedom. Despite earning titles like the man no prison can keep locked up, Mark's journey poignantly reminds us of the complexities of the human experience. As we bid farewell to this remarkable individual, his legacy endures, inviting us to ponder the triumphs and tribulations of pursuing liberty. If you're intrigued, join us for more gripping stories. Like, share, and subscribe.